All right, it's Wednesday evening. Welcome in, everyone. That means it's time for Tavern Talks, the Shifty Boar, where we talk about different things in Dungeons and Dragons. Of course, talk with other fellow dungeon masters from out my community, the community that I work with Baldwin Games as well. Welcome back, Belinda Baldwin. We had Belinda in a couple of weeks ago, and we had a little bit of a sound issue as we had a very prominent echo effect on Belinda's voice, as I was not aware of that. I could not read that in the chat. So we are going to have a do-over tonight. Welcome in, Belinda. How's it going?
Oh, thanks. I really appreciate it. Yeah, it's going well. And like spring has sprung here, so it's gorgeous and warm out finally.
Excellent, excellent. So yeah, I got the trusty headphones on tonight, echoing from my desktop speakers here coming through. Like always on Tavern Talks, we just discuss your experience with DMing. So let's go ahead and start off with the first question. When did you begin playing Dungeons and Dragons?
I started playing Dungeons and Dragons when I was 11 with my brother. My mom came home with the Red Box and had decided that Dungeons and Dragons would be a really good hobby for us. She thought that it would really help us focus on math and history and reading. And it did all of those things. And it really sparked like a joy within us for playing games and using our imaginations while we played. What she did not count on, because she was DMing for us, was that we would also fight a lot. My brother and I bickered constantly, and we were having a great time, but my mom wasn't. And so she said, if you want to keep playing Dungeons and Dragons, one of you has to become the DM. She quit.
Inter-party conflict, yeah.
Yeah, inter-party conflict, exactly. And because I was the oldest, I had the best reading comprehension, and I became the DM really for a very long time. Yeah.
So when you first became, did you really know all the rules of the box, or did you just kind of wing it? Obviously, starting off as a player and then immediately becoming a DM. Did you really delve into the rules as much, or did you just have was a bit more imaginative, more fun, just freestyle stuff?
Yeah, I think for years it was freestyle stuff. I mean, we all had our own interpretations of the rule set, and every single time we had a new friend that was really into D&D, they bring something with them, and so I think probably until we were in our mid-teens, a lot of our play was mostly house rules. Yeah.
So how was your first? Do you remember anything about the first session you ran? Was it just you and your brother? Or did you have a couple friends over for the first time you ran?
No, I'm sure it was just my brother and I. In the beginning, probably at least a year, maybe longer. It probably was just something my brother and I played. This was in the 80s, and a lot of our friends were interested in riding their bikes and reading and doing math for fun. So it took a while for us to convince our friends to find friends to play with. I think one of the very first people that we ended up convincing to join us was my mom's best friend's son, who was about a year younger than my brother and I, or maybe he was the same age as my brother, Joey. And then for years, it was just the three of us, and he'd come to our house over the summer and sometimes would spend weeks with us. And I just remember all of those weeks just filled with D&D in the basement because we didn't have air conditioning, and that's where it was coolest. And he'd put up with my brother and I's fighting. Yeah.
I always tell everyone growing up in the 80s, people ask what it's like, and I'm like, just seriously watch Stranger Things without all of the Vecna and the Upside Down. But it was that era. I mean, we played D&D, we rode our bikes all over the place, and just had a lot of fun. So what would you do? I'm assuming that you would prefer to be a dungeon master over a player. Is that a good assumption?
Yes. Yeah, I like playing, but I'm very creative, and I've always been a daydreamer and coming up with imaginary worlds and scenarios, and DMing gives me the platform to bring my daydreams to life. As a player, I'm held back. There's only so much I can do with my character, and yeah, so world building and coming up with the adventure scenarios, I get a lot of joy out of that. And I think the other aspect of DMing that I love is the shared storytelling aspect. So really weaving in players' backstories into a game, and understanding what they want to get out of the game, and having them contribute to the lore. I really enjoy that part of DMing as well.
Okay. So, if you're a player, whenever you're playing, what is your favorite part about being a player when you get to play as a player, as a PC?
I think the mystery of it all. I prefer playing in games that I haven't already run or
Which is
read.
hard. Which is
Yeah,
really hard, unless it's
it can
homebrew.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be hard. It wasn't so hard until I joined Baldwin Games, and now I feel like I've run just about everything. But before that, it wasn't as hard. And so yeah, not knowing what's coming next, and having the chance to react, or to work as a group to to come up with the best way to address a problem. The team dynamics, I enjoy that part of the game.
So, let's go back to playing with your brother. What is one of your I don't want to say worst, but I guess that'd be a simple word. What's your worst D&D memory of playing D&D, whether it be as a DM or a player?
Um, I don't know, worst. I don't. I can't think of any bad games. I did not with my brother. Actually, in high school, when D&D actually was weirdly more popular, and so we actually were able to create a D&D group, like an after school club.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the players decided to be a wizard and to use like charm person and spells like that, to influence and have his way with women. And I was like,
Oof.
you do know I'm a woman and I'm your DM, right? Like, I find it very surprising that you have so little awareness that you think that this is acceptable behavior in general, and especially with a woman running the table. So I had to have words with him after the game, and I asked him to, if he couldn't be more respectful, to just not come back.
Mm-hmm. It's really great how especially the last 5-6 years, how things are getting better in those regards. I mean, a lot of things brought to attention especially for older males, that they never thought about those types of things in the past, and bringing that, that mirror up to understand that, be better. You know what I mean? That's really, really great way to look at it. Now, speaking of that, we discussed the last time, and this might be one of your favorite or best D&D memories, but we were talking about, advice and such like that. So you specifically, one of the questions were that I'm going to go ahead and ask you now, and that you have been DMing for a long time. And as a woman, do you have advice for male players and male DMs that are out there?
Yeah, I think that the D&D community is actually a very welcoming place. And I feel that the older males in the community kind of get a bad rep sometimes. Maybe harsher than their reputation is really. It's not really deserved, I don't think. Not to say that there isn't always room for improvement in our community, but I think that the over 40 male population I have found to be and I play at cons, I play at local AL just stores, I've played with local groups like meetups, and I have regular groups. I've played with a variety of individuals throughout my life. I even played and DM'd a lot in the Army. And the community, I have always found it to be a much more open community than I find in other places. Like I work in the corporate world in finance, and I would have to say that what is welcomed and accepted and even nurtured in the D&D communities in terms of diversity, I don't see it so often in the office. Like, that's one of the reasons so many corporate companies have diversity teams is to enforce diversity. Whereas in the Dungeons and Dragons community, I feel like it's a much more natural. Yeah, it's there. It's part of our community culture. And, and same with like churches or even just like neighborhood, like just friends in the neighborhood. It's not that I wouldn't be friends with all of these people, but I just recognize that they're not as open and accepting as I have found the D&D community to be over the years. And that D&D community is made up of a lot of men over 40, right? And one of the things I like about it is that a lot of these men are advocates of inclusion. It doesn't have to be me as the woman at the table calling out bad behavior and checking people, right? Like I have had experiences where the men at the table are the first to check themselves. And like a recent story of that is my husband, who hasn't played D&D his whole life, has never really been interested in role-playing games, suddenly got the bug last summer. I don't know if it's Stranger Things. I don't know. But, and he's like, I want to play D&D. And I was like, oh, okay. So I spent some time at home. I gave him like the basic rule book and we played some basic games. And then I invited him to come to our AL table that I DM every Sunday and play. And one of the adventures that we were in, and it was one of the first ones that he played in, there was a scenario where there was a young wizard or scholar who was desperately in love with a woman, and they'd been friends for some time, and he described this woman as just beautiful and strong and intelligent, and he wanted to ask her out on a first date, but he wanted the first date to go very well, and so he asked the players' help in facilitating this date and ensuring that the date went well. And so as players, they'd done all this prep work to like have like the right food and drinks and flowers and so on. And then when the woman walked into the bar, she was a large half-orc lady. And the way that I described the scene was that the scholar was very excited and smitten, and it was obvious that she was just as excited and smitten and nervous about the date as the scholar was, and it was supposed to be a touching moment, but my husband was like, "What? An orc?" And he was like, this guy's like half her size. She's twice as big as him, and he's he's going on about orcs and not being attractive, and one of the other men at the table around the same age as us stops him, and he's like, "No, like that's not acceptable. It's not okay, like for you to decide what somebody else finds is attractive, right? Like, you need to check yourself, essentially." And my husband was like, oh, and everybody at the table would, backed that player who checked my husband. And I was like, I had a proud mama moment. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. Because it's not me having to step in, or another woman having to step in. It's, they're as a community, they're advocating and they're willing to speak up on behalf of others and inclusion. And I think it was good for my husband to see, because all he's ever experienced is corporate world and, his guy friends and the neighborhood. Right. So, I think this is probably the most inclusive environment he's ever been part of. And it's a learning experience for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The whole beholder creature in D&D was beauty's in the eye of the beholder. That's the reason why the monster was created in the first place. So yeah. So what's when you're DMing, what do you find to be the hardest thing to prep? Like to prepare, whether it's going to be playing online. I mean, and if you have different things that are you view as harder for something online, harder for something in person, harder for a convention, what do you view as one of the hardest things to prep before a session?
Yeah, I've been DMing a long time, so if I have a module, if I have a hardcover, I'm a-okay. I think the hardest thing to prep for is probably players going off script, right? Like players have a knack for solving a problem in a way that the writer just didn't consider, or I myself as a DM, if I'm doing something that's a bit more homebrew, and so, and I don't think you can really prep for that, but remembering to remain flexible and not starting with no, but instead start with yes. Right. Yes. And as a DM rolling with it, in order to ensure that, everybody's feeling like, they're making a contribution to the story and figuring out how to get that story back on script. Right. Probably the hardest part.
Now, here's a new question that I thought of a couple of days ago, and I'm going to start asking when we have other DMs come in from the community, from different groups and such like that, because I've found, especially over the past few years as a professional DM since 2020, playing with literally, probably over 1,000 players in the past 3 years or so, 4 years coming up or whatever, but how do you, as a DM, prevent the players? Because there's inevitably players that want to skip to the end of the adventure right at the beginning. They want to try to bypass everything and get to the end of the adventure because they think they're going to win D&D. How do you deal with those players?
I don't feel like I have any of the. I don't think that's something that I've experienced very often. I certainly have experienced the the player that tends to take up a lot of the limelight, right? The story's all about them, right?
Yeah.
But skipping to the and definitely metagamers, but I don't know about skipping all to the end. I know that and min-maxers. I guess maybe the combination might be like, min-maxers and metagamers that feel like they shouldn't, that they already know the answer, maybe.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times what I like to do is I really enjoy encounters that aren't just straight out of the monster's manual, right? I like creative writing. And coming from the modules that I play, I try to run ones that I'm like, ooh, that's a twist, or having to remind the player, that they might know that, but would their player necessarily know that? Like, give them a moment to think about, is this something their player would actually think of or know? And if they're still insistent that they would know, then I might say, okay, well, go ahead and give me a check, right? And and sometimes they get lucky, and it goes through and it plays out exactly how they wanted it to. Other times, maybe it doesn't play out quite the way that they wanted it to. But I try to find a happy medium, because I don't like shutting my players down. They want to be the hero, and they are the heroes. They're the heroes of the story.
Oh yeah, exactly.
So let's find a way for you to still be the hero, but also still enjoy the story.
I actually the situation is very similar, but almost the opposite, where I do let players remind them of certain things because their character would know it. But as a player, it's been a week since you've played. You've forgotten about it. We just had a situation with our live stream on Sundays where we played last Sunday, and the NPC says, make sure that you do not say the person's name. And then on Sunday, we got towards the middle of the session, and one of the players said the person's name, and I went ahead and said, "Hey, just to remind you," and they're like, "Oh, I forgot." So I always, say, "Hey, your character would remember, even though you might have forgotten." So having played, obviously, starting off with the red box, what is your favorite edition of Dungeons and Dragons?
I
Or
think,
if you want to rank them, you can rank them too. It's up to you.
no, that's okay. I mean, I think we all know which would be on the bottom of the list. So I
We don't talk about that, Morty.
we don't talk about that one. It's kind of like the Highlander movies. There's just certain ones you don't talk about. But I guess probably 3.5, late second edition 3.5. I love the world building aspect of Dungeons and Dragons, and so there was that sweet spot, that time period in the 90s where there were just so many beautiful campaigns coming out. Planescape, Spelljammer, Dark Sun, Ravenloft, were actually, like the Domains of Dread, not so much Ravenloft itself. And each one had so much personality. Hollow World, a lot of people don't remember or know about Hollow World. It's sort of a journey to the center of the earth type campaign, and so I think that for me that was like the golden age, and not so much. It's not so much about the rules as much as it was the content.
Yeah, that's one of the things that actually drew me to fifth edition, was it gave me that nostalgic feel about that era, where you had all the different things coming out. You had what was it, Calamar? You had, or was it Calamar? Is that how you say that? You had Birthright. You had all those different games, all the different worlds. Mystara actually came out with its own supplements as well. That was really awesome as well. So when you are playing or even DMing, what is your favorite class from any edition to have, either playing as a player or having in your game as a DM?
As a DM, I don't have a favorite class. I've learned that diversity is so important in terms of, character classes. In order for a party to be successful in completing a mission. Though I am still trying to find a group that will play like all halflings or all goblins, or I want to all something campaign, right? Yeah, all kobolds. It doesn't matter. I just want everybody to be from like the same place and the same race. Just to have fun with that trope. But I think as a player, I've fallen in love with clerics. For 5th edition clerics, I really enjoy playing them. They're very diverse. I feel like each cleric has a very different sort of play style, and it's nice because I think in previous editions, a cleric, it was kind of like in the video games as well. Healer, I need a healer, right? Medic, I'm down. But now clerics might not be the healer, and there's enough healing in 5th edition with all the other classes that they're not so dependent on the cleric being the healer, and so you can branch out and do other things. And I enjoy playing the clerik.
That's actually one of the, speaking of all the healing, I was always hoping that for Adventures League, since for those of you who don't know, with Belinda and I work with Baldwin Games, which runs a lot of Adventures League, which is the organized play for Dungeons and Dragons. I've always wanted them to allow the variant of healing surges, where they can spin their hit die during as an action, just to help when you have a table. Because sometimes, like in our live play games, we have a couple of people that have a little bit of healing, but they don't have like a cleric or a paladin or someone or a druid that does specializes in healing. So having that would be really cool. So you could play like an all rogue group or something like that. So let's go ahead and go into your experience as a DM, and what is, like, we always talk about, we had John Christian on last week. We were both members of the mentoring training committee for Baldwin Games, helping the DMs out. And we always talk about, no matter how long you've been playing as a dungeon master, you can always get better. So if there was what's one piece of advice that you would give to a veteran dungeon master?
I think if you're not part of a community of DMs and players, I would highly recommend joining a community. I wasn't in a community. I'd always had friends that DM and play, and we talk to each other and swap stories. But it's not the same as being in an actual formal community like Baldwin Games, or I'm also part of Fantasy Grounds Gaming Lounge. And also I'm part of Scale, which is a Colorado AL like DM community that hosts they host all the AL games for the Colorado conventions, and I've found that these communities have been like incredibly welcoming and supportive and always willing to answer my questions, and even dumb questions. Sometimes I ask some dumb questions, but I've learned a lot from them, and I've being a player with DMs that are sometimes radically different from me in terms of play style. It has given me the opportunity to see how they would handle situations, or to ask them a question like if I'm struggling with a certain type of player, asking like how reaching out to that community and say how do you guys handle this scenario, and getting their feedback has made me a better DM and a better player, but definitely a better DM.
So, say for example, for a new DM, it would be very similar advice, or would you have something outside of that, like anything about like where to find players or anything like that? Obviously, what type of advice would you give to a new dungeon master?
I think it would be since we've already done this, the answer. It would be the same advice. Once again, those community members will act as mentors and sounding boards, and there are a lot of communities like Fantasy Grounds Gaming Lounge and Baldwin Games, and actually there's another community within the Fantasy Grounds Discord servers called Fantasy Grounds Academy, that not only teaches you how to use the tool, but also teaches you how to be a player, or how to just play D&D, as well as how to DM. And there's a lot of like Baldwin Games and Fantasy Grounds Gaming Lounge, Fuggle. They actually have like DM mentorship programs where if you're a new DM, you can have a DM mentor, somebody that's been DMing a long time, that will help you prep your games, or help, or even sit in on your games, or as a player perhaps, and then give you feedback afterwards. And that's just not, if you're just playing with your friends at the table, you'll learn, and you'll find your style. But I think this is sort of like a cheat code, having access to these communities.
Yeah, that's one of the things we always talk about with when I'm talking with, like when we're having our committee meetings and things like that, was like when people would come in and we're trying to, explain to them, you're playing at a convention. You're not playing with your home group. You're playing with people from all walks of life and strangers most of the time, especially when you go to like Gen Con or Origins, and you're not running like a DDXP track where it's the same group with the same DM all weekend. And a lot of the DMs, they're like, well, I've been DMing for 20 years. And I'm like, well, if you've been DMing for 20 years, that's awesome. You've got a lot of experience there. But if you've been DMing for 20 years for the same 5 or 6 people in your group, you're going to know those players, and you're going to have to kind of adjust. And communities like that are really, really great. So I know that you remember the Fantasy Ground group. I know you. We talked about on the previous one, with all the echo, about how you use a lot of Foundry as well for the virtual D&D weekends. Talk a little bit about Foundry. Talk a little bit more, maybe, if you want, about the Fantasy Grounds group, and then tell us a little bit about Scale, your organization for AL in Colorado.
Oh, yeah. So Foundry came about because I was running Fantasy Grounds for Baldwin Games, but I just found that I could not get the players. I'd put 3 or 4 games up for the weekend, and maybe one of my tables would actually fire off. It wasn't that way during the pandemic, I think, because so many more people, their only choice for playing D&D was online. But once the pandemic ended and people were able to go back to their local games and in-person games, finding Fantasy Grounds players was difficult. And so I moved to Foundry. I chose Foundry over Roll20, even though I know for the Baldwin Games community, Roll20 is very popular. I am a little bit spoiled by Fantasy Grounds automation, and Foundry gives that same power to me as a DM, to be able to automate effects. But the nice thing about Foundry is that it is very similar to Roll20. So it's easy for players to make the leap if they've been playing on Roll20 to Foundry. It uses a lot of things that they're familiar with. The layout is very similar. The way that they expect the tokens to work is the same. It also has a Beyond 20 extension. And so I think, whereas Fantasy Grounds is a very powerful tool, it is just so different from Roll20 that I think it's a hard leap for people to make, especially if they're only playing 1 or 2 games over the weekend. Whereas moving from Roll20 to Foundry, I think is an easier move for players. And I've had a lot of success with players coming to the Foundry table, not just recurring players, but also like I get new faces, and I'm like, yay, a new person playing Foundry, wonderful. And so that's what brought me to Foundry. I haven't really, from a community perspective, other than Baldwin Games, I haven't really found a Foundry community. I know that there is like the Foundry Discord server, and there's a lot of great discussion there around tools and modules/extensions and how to code certain effects. So from a technical perspective, I found it to be a wonderful resource. But just talking about like playing, my communities, I think, are still Baldwin, AL, and Fuggle. Those are probably my main areas that I spend my time in. Scale, they aren't really online so much. They do have the store that the main administrators of Scale play out of is the Yellow King in Colorado Springs, and they do have a Discord server, but primarily Scale is an in-person organization. And they have a wonderful selection of DMs. Like the Genghis Khan is probably one of the largest conventions for AL in Denver, and we fill a whole ballroom. I'm not sure actually how many tables it is. Maybe 20 or 30 tables, and especially during the epic play, almost every convention there's like one day where there's an epic that's run, and then it gets crazy. But yeah, so it's nice because it's local to me, so I can make a number of those conventions every year, and I have the you get to know the faces and the DMs that that you're playing alongside, and I enjoy the community, and then Fuggle is Fantasy Grounds only, and it stands for Fantasy Grounds Gaming Lounge, and it is a pickup game Discord server, and so there are games running, and it's not just D&D, and if it's D&D, it's not just AL. We have people running second edition games, Savage Worlds, Call of Cthulhu, Pathfinder. You name it. If it runs on Fantasy Grounds, there's probably somebody that's running games for that system, and then they do like D&D, AL, and non-AL D&D games. And it's free to join, and there are games. There's a game almost every day in a month. So and that's the nice thing about the pickup games and Fuggle is that it's there for if you live in an area where maybe there isn't a local gaming store that you can go to, or you have a weird working schedule and you can't make it to a regular game, you have the ability to jump into this pickup games server and pick your poison. There's probably something out there running that you'll enjoy playing.
Yeah, we do have the link for that. We also, which we will put up when we, this will obviously be a video on demand here on Twitch when we're finished up. And then, pardon me, usually the week after, the Monday of the week after, we will go ahead and post them up on YouTube. And we'll definitely put those links in the YouTube description for the players, for the viewers to check it out. So, here's a question I was going to ask you last time, and I forgot to do so because we were talking about how the community shares a lot of things. We share information, we share prep, we share all types of stuff. I mean, I copy rooms almost every virtual D&D weekend for other DMs, like you said, that have a work schedule that, man, I've worked 60 hours this week. How am I going to get this together? Just to help them out. And one of the things that you do a lot of is you do maps. And I've used many of your maps in some of my games because you're generous and share those. What is your favorite map making software? That's what I was going to ask you last time and forgot.
Oh, right. Yeah, I actually use Campaign Cartographer. That's a lot. It's like it's CAD. Yeah. And so there are like Incarnate and Dungeon Draft. There are like other tools out there that are like online and beautiful, like really beautiful. But you can tell when something's been made with Incarnate because the asset they have a certain look and feel, right? Mm-hmm. And so the thing that I like about Campaign Cartographer, even though it's cost me a lot of money and a lot of time to learn, is that I have a lot more flexibility with style, and I'm constantly learning, like, tips and tricks and ways to do things. They have a wonderful community as well, which I am part of. And so I spend a lot of time on their forums, looking at like what other map makers have done, reading their articles. Some of them post videos on how to, and a lot of times when they put out new assets, they also put out a how-to document. So it will take you step by step on how to use those new assets and that new style. And so that's, I guess that's why I use a Campaign Cartographer. Not to say that it's the best one out there. I try to be tools agnostic. It just depends. It's kind of like a game system, like, the whole Pathfinder versus Dungeons and Dragons. It's more about what's your play style, what's your style, right? And you tell me what you like, and then I'll tell you what tool or what game system might be a good fit for you.
Yeah, it's always interesting when people say, "Oh, D&D is better than Pathfinder. Pathfinder's better than D&D." It's like it's a preference. Someone might like sausage on their pizza. Someone might like pepperoni. Someone might not like pizza at all. So it's always. I actually do use Campaign Cartographer myself. I think it's a Mike Schley. Mike Schley, the D&D. Yeah, he does a lot of stuff with Campaign Cartographer, and I love. I mean, we talk about all the time playing for years, and you have these old blue-printed graph paper maps from back in the day, and then you open up a 5th edition book and you see these beautiful maps. It's like, oh my goodness. And it was really cool. Dyson Logos does a lot of great stuff too that does have that older school feel, but still has some stuff in there. But that's one of the reasons with Campaign Cartographer I got those to get those assets from Mike Schley, so that when you make a map, it kind of looks like that type of map from Dungeons and Dragons.
Feel. Yeah, right. Yeah.
And yes, it does have a steep learning curve. I'm still learning stuff about it all the time. I do love the overland maps for it as well. So, why don't you talk a little bit about what you enjoy outside of Dungeons and Dragons? If we have time for anything outside of D&D and work.
Yeah, no, I amazingly I do. Yes. Well, so I'm a mother of 3, but my kids are all grown now. My youngest is just about to turn 18, and she's got her first real job, and is talking about studying to become an electrician. And my 2 oldest boys are in college, and so, but I still make time for them. It's not just D&D all the time. And I also love to read, and I live in the mountains, and I'm on 5 acres of land, but it's mountainous land, so only 2 acres of it is really usable, and a lot of that is house. But I do try to grow things up here. That's challenging. Like, let's talk about challenging. Like, I can run an adventure for you. Give me an adventure, I'll have it ready in an hour. But ask me to grow vegetables in the mountains, it's impossible.
I'm actually trying to grow some hot peppers in a condo. So we'll see.
We'll see how that goes. Yeah, right. It is fickle creatures, plants. But yeah, so that's, and actually it's spring, so I'll be spending a lot of my time outdoors, getting my garden ready and planting. I also raise pigs and chickens. And so I'll be also spending a lot of time outdoors fixing up the pig pen, because the previous occupants and the weather, invariably every year there's like repairs that have to be done and just cleaning up and stuff before the next set of piglets can be introduced. So so I and then because I live in Colorado, hiking and camping, and then my husband has finally convinced me to pull out and dust off the bike and do some cycling as well. So so I try and get out there.
So we also talked earlier about world creation, creativity, and such like that. You do, of course, have a dungeon craft module out on the DM's Guild, and one of your favorite worlds that you like to run is Eberron. Of course, that's an argument for another discussion. Just my opinion, sorry, but I know that you're working on some more stuff for that to perhaps release on the Dungeon Masters Guild. You wanted to do some of that with your campaign you were talking about last time?
Yeah. So I have released my very first adventure module on DM's Guild back in December. That was a Spelljammer one shot, and it was it's a space horror for 8th level characters. So that's called The Hunger, and that was released in December. And now I am prepping for a series of Eberron Dungeon Craft adventures, a trilogy that I'm going to call The Terror of Heracrowns. And Heracrowns Forest is a forest in southern Thrain. And I have a series of adventures related to a hag terrorizing the villages in the area. But it is so the very first one that I'll be releasing is a murder mystery, but the whole series that I'm going to be releasing for Eberron, they're all going to be around like investigative work. So not your typical hero stories, but more as in Eberron they call them inquisitives, but an investigative agency. So it might feel a little bit more like Ravenloft Mist Hunters than your typical AL adventure.
Yeah, that's something we try to do with Dreams of the Red Wizards coming up, is making it more social and exploration instead of just going straight combat through. So what is your current D&D schedule like? I know we talked about last time you mentioned you didn't have a whole bunch of social media presence, but like, what's your current schedule like, and where can people find you if they want to play with you?
Yeah. So I generally play or run 4 to 5 days a week. I play in person and online and at conventions. And because I live in Colorado, I DM for a local game store in Aurora called Crit Castle Games. So if you want to find me in person, I'm there every Sunday. And then I play at the larger local conventions. Colorado has a lot of conventions. I could play like every month from February to November if I at a convention if I wanted to. Yes. So I try to limit it to the big ones. So I tend to go to Genghis Con, Kobold Con, Tacticon. Those are the conventions that I generally go to locally. And then I DM'd for Baldwin Games for the first time at Gen Con last summer, and I volunteered again to DM again this year at Gen Con. So if you're not from Colorado, but you are planning to go to Gen Con, you can find me there. And
I'll be there as well.
I also, yeah, I look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah.
And then I also DM for Fantasy Grounds. At that Fuggle, the Fantasy Grounds Gaming Lounge. So I'm there a lot online. Even if I'm not DMing or playing, I tend to hang around and chat and add memes. And then last but not least, you can find me virtual D&D weekends DMing on Foundry for Baldwin Games.
Speaking of that, next Tuesday, our tickets go on sale for the next virtual D&D weekend. What are you running? What is your schedule like for virtual D&D weekend? And we can go ahead and put the link up. We have it on our Discord as well. We always put that link up, but it's at Yawning Portal. If you just search Yawning Portal Wizards and whatever search engine you use, you'll be able to get there to the virtual D&D weekends. Tickets go on sale. What are you running?
I haven't actually looked at my schedule yet because they just came out today. But I assume I will be running Keys from the Golden Vault because that's what I have been running the last 2 months, and that's what I put as my first preference to continue running this month. So most likely Keys from the Golden Vault.
Oh, nice. Do you know what which adventures?
No, I haven't. Looked.
Oh, okay. Just whatever they sign you up for. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Actually, I'm one of those people that I'm like, just give me whatever works. Yeah.
Whatever works.
Yeah.
I actually chose not to run the Keys for the Golden Vault because of the fact that we're running it on our live play on Sundays. We break it down. Most of those adventures, you can play in 4 hours. Of course, each one of our streams is 3 hours, so we break it down into 2 parts. Kind of drag it out. And such like that. But yeah, if you want to play with Belinda on Foundry, play the new anthology Keys from the Golden Vault. The tickets do go on sale supposed to be next Tuesday at noon. Sometimes there's a little bit of a difference in time, just with some of the technical issues that might be having getting the games up. But you can definitely go to the Yawning Portal to get tickets. I'll be running season 9 adventures. I believe I have the last tier 2, and then I think I'm going to be doing the first tier 3 for season 9 adventures. Those are adventures in hell. So check those out. Yeah. So again, thank you, Belinda, for coming on. Thankfully, we don't have any echo. I haven't seen any reports of any echo in the chat, which is great. And it was awesome talking to you again. And this time we should not have any issues with making sure that the sound is working on all of that. But for those of you that are perhaps maybe watching on video on demand, and those also watching live, thanks so much for checking us out. If you don't have a chance to check it out on video on demand, check it out on our YouTube channel. You can find all the links to our socials down below. If you click on the About Us section there, you can see all of the information. You can check out all of our social links for different social media platforms. If you would, we always appreciate all the support that everyone's given us. You can go to each one of those, perhaps maybe give us a like, give us a follow, maybe subscribe to us on YouTube. check out the alerts whenever we upload anything there. Of course, tomorrow we will be back with our dungeon delving. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. and Friday, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. where we play Lord of the Rings Online. We are playing on the Landreval server. It's the 16th anniversary of Lord of the Rings Online. Whew. And we're going through the anniversary event, which is going on until the big, I think maybe sometime next week. But yes, that's anything to add or anything to say in farewell?
Just thank you. Yeah, it was a pleasure. Again, I really enjoyed chatting with you.
Yes, thank you so much for being on. And everyone else, take care and have a great rest of your evening, a great weekend, and happy adventuring. We'll see you.